Journalists report what people say and do, and they report facts they've observed or confirmed. They report details selectively, according to what is newsworthy. What is newsworthy? I'm Dennis Jerz. I teach journalism at Seton Hill University. Routine things are not newsworthy. Rare ones are. Dog bites man. Happens all the time. Man bites dog. Well, that would be more unusual, so it's more newsworthy. Local woman bakes a pie. There's nothing unusual there. Kind woman bakes pies for stray dogs. Well, okay, if she's kind of odd and it's a slow news day, but what if she put caviar in the pies? Yeah, and the dogs hate the pies. Well, that would be more newsworthy. What if she gets angry and turns on the dogs? Now, most of us are ordinary people and we don't do unusual things, but if we do unusual things, we become more newsworthy. Let's say this eccentric local pie lady decides to run for mayor. Maybe by, being in the right place at the right time, or being really good at something, or succeeding at something, we become more influential over others and hence more newsworthy. Pie lady wins mayoral race. Well, how about once she gets to the mayoral mansion, Mayor Pie Lady bakes another pie? Well, that's not news, is it? I mean, you could do a soft news feature, a personality profile, in which you say, despite a busy schedule at City Hall, Mayor Jane Smith still finds time to bake the pies that made her famous. But by itself, the fact that the mayor baked a pie would not be newsworthy, because even important people like mayors do boring stuff. The mayor takes a nap. All right, well, the mayor takes a nap during a busy workday. Shame on you, mayor. Okay, well, context matters. Maybe the real story isn't who and what the mayor napped, but what's newsworthy is how, when, and why. Briefly, after a marathon overnight legislative session in which she fulfilled her campaign promise to fund the city's animal shelter. Well, maybe the dogs will forgive her now. See, a story that emphasizes that the mayor is tired because she worked hard to fulfill her campaign promises creates an emotional connection between this important person and the news. When I lose $1 in the vending machine, I hate it, but my loss doesn't affect anybody else, so who cares? Okay, but what if it's not me, but somebody important? What if it's, visiting Pope loses $1 in vending machine. Clone of George Washington loses $1 in vending machine. Now, that would be ironic. Oh, okay. Pope loses clone of George Washington in vending machine. Oh, I'd be all over that story. Where was I? Oh, right. Newsworthiness. Cat stuck in tree? Nah. Escaped circus lion stuck in tree. Aha. Escaped George Washington clone stuck in tree. Escaped circus lion chases George Washington clone up the tree. And of course, if that ever happened, it would be wise to check out what kind of tree we're talking about, because if it was a cherry tree, well, then you've got a newsworthy story. Weird stuff is newsworthy, but scary and dangerous stuff is also newsworthy. Airliner crashes, they are newsworthy because they are rare and deadly. Good reporters should not dwell on the negative, but it is a fact. Disasters that don't happen aren't news. So an air flight that's delayed isn't really news. I mean, except when it is news. Bad weather forces 300 to spend night on runway. Well, instead of a big passenger airliner, what if it's just a private helicopter with 4 people? Well, who are those 4 people? What if it happened to, a couple on their way to their honeymoon? Storm strands honeymooning mayor on runway. Mayor and clone groom stranded by blizzards. Mayor and clone hitched by Pope while stranded in blizzard. The more prominent people you have, the more newsworthy the story is. Now, I wasn't really planning to talk about headlines, but as you can see, when a story gets complicated, you really have to think about what goes into the headline, because every word matters. Let's just hope there are no dogs and pies involved. An event that impacts many people is more newsworthy than an event that impacts fewer people. A flood that has a severe impact on just one guy, well, yeah, that could be news. A different storm that isn't as severe and has only a moderate impact, but it affects a lot more people, that story might be more newsworthy even if that second storm isn't as destructive. The number of people affected by the event also affects its newsworthiness. In addition, proximity matters. If it happened nearby, the local impact is greater. If the same event were distant, it would have to affect more people, or affect them more severely, or affect more famous people in order to remain as newsworthy. It's not a particularly admirable human trait, but let's be honest, those faraway people are strangers to us, and we're just less interested in them. Now, of course, a reporter can emphasize the local angle, seeking out and publicizing connections between faraway events and local issues that local readers will care about. So, my town mayor sends pies to flood refugees at elsewhere town. If it were some other mayor sending support, it really wouldn't matter to the people in my town. But if their mayor is involved, it becomes more newsworthy. Now, I hope it goes without saying, but since we're covering the basics, I'll say it. In order for something to be newsworthy, it has to be news. Elsewhere town rejects pies that my town sent yesterday. If the flood happened last week, the flood is no longer the news. And if the my town mayor sent the pies yesterday, then the act of sending the pies is no longer news. What's news is how Elsewhereville today reacted to the pies that my town sent yesterday to the refugees from the flood from last week. You see, the more recent the event is, the more newsworthy it is. The story that just summarizes what the City Museum website says about the flood from many years ago wouldn't be very newsworthy because its focus isn't the news, its focus is history. Not that there's anything wrong with history. Journalists are said to write the first rough draft of history. Let's review newsworthiness. Extraordinary events are more newsworthy than ordinary events. Notable people are more newsworthy than ordinary people. If it has a significant impact, it's more newsworthy than something with a slight impact. If it impacts more people, it's more newsworthy than something that impacts fewer people. An event that happened nearby is more newsworthy than something far away. A recent event being reported for the first time is news if it happened weeks or months ago, and your readers can Google it just like you did. Well, then it's not news. So a story does not have to fit every one of these categories in order to be newsworthy. Having said that, if your story doesn't actually offer something new, then it's not newsworthy. At Seton Hill University, this is Dennis Jerz talking about newsworthiness.